On Stream 3, engine expert Mike Bush explains everything you ever wanted to know about modern digital engine monitors and why you should be flying with one. This presentation qualifies for FAA wings and AMT credit. At 6:30 on Stream 2, look back at 50 years of Oshkosh with a special presentation from last year at Theater in the Woods. And at 7 o'clock on Stream 1, a panel of NASA test pilots profile NASA's X-planes that have been a part of aviation history for decades. For a complete schedule of events, visit eaatogether.org and check out the Oshkosh Show specials and additional seminars from our exhibitors. Remember, all of our presentations will also be available on demand. Thanks for watching.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Spirit of Aviation Week segment. Today we have a great EAA friend with us on the show. Welcome Dewey Davenport to this segment today.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to join with you guys and talk about aviation, and thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. You know, a lot of people know you through your barnstorming business, Good Folk and Old Times. They know you as Mr. Good Folk. They might have seen you on your YouTube channel, but we want to know, how did you get started in the business?
Well, getting started in the business started back when I was about 7 years old. So just getting into aviation, with model airplanes and different things like that. I started with rubber band and then RC, and then I got to start flying airplanes in high school, like real ones. And through those years of being adolescents, just dreaming about owning an old biplane, having a grass runway, and giving rides was something I always wanted to do since I was a kid. And, through the years of working hard and buying an airplane and, a couple friends that's kind of mentored me over the years, started the business and become a barnstormer.
That's awesome. So, as a kid, you started in RC and you kind of grew up and you've flown jets. Tell us a little about your F-18 there on the screen now, but tell us a little about growing up from rubber band all the way to turbine powered airplanes.
Well, just my parents supported me a lot, with the RC stuff. And I just started with the Gillo kits and, building a T6 Texan or a P-51. And then I'll go in the backyard, throw it, and it flies right into the trees, and like the first flight. So, it just kind of went from that point. Then I got into RC. So I was about 11 years old. And that really just took off. I started, I learned one summer, and then I started teaching people. And then I got into some competitions, when I was a teenager, probably my senior year, started pylon racing, Quickie 500, and then quarter midget racers. And man, I did really well, got into some pattern, precision aerobatics. And through those years, my skills got better, knowing more people. And really it kind of just progressed into like what you see there with that F-18. So that F-18 was a sponsored aircraft that I got from Jet Central, which was a turbine manufacturer. That's a real turbine in that airplane. And a friend got me this deal. I never had a jet. That's my first jet ever. And I tell you, when I got it, people was saying all kinds of crazy stuff, saying that I'm going to crash it and hurt people. But I was very good at like precision aerobatics and stuff like that. And I showed up with that airplane, and I just, I had a lot of fun with it. I had a great time sharing the history that I knew about it. A gentleman named Dave Fusinato built the aircraft, maybe one other person before Dave got it, but Dave did the finishing. And then, like I said, Jet Central, I went around all over the country competing and just going to fly-ins, kind of like what EAA is with AirVenture, but we did it with model airplanes. And the picture that was there, that was in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland, which was 2007. I flew in the Jet World Masters.
Wow.
And got to compete with the very best of the best with scale competition. And boy, it was a lot of fun, a lot of stress. It rains a lot in Ireland, so it's not really conducive for model airplanes. So
I hear you. So you graduated kind of from the RC side and also carried it on, into your professional flying career. Let's talk about that a little bit. So you get your ratings, you built time, you went and flew skydivers. You're one of the only people I know that haven't only flown 182s and Twin Otters to throw skydivers out the side and jump. You've also flown Twin Beaches and other things too. Let's talk about your skydiving experience really quick, because you still do it today a little.
yeah, so it really started out once I got my commercial rating. I was 20 years old. I went out to Skydive Green County here in Xenia, Ohio. Jim and Lee West owns it. They own this drop zone since 1961. And I went out there. I was young, 20 years old. So I said, hey, I got a commercial ticket, multi-engine. I want to fly this Beech 18. And he pretty much laughed at me. And I kept showing up the very next day and like the very next day. And after, I showed up for a while, he was working on the engine. An R985 takes a lot of work. So he said, well, if you think you're going to be flying here, you need a taxi. And here I am just like out of the blue, like, seriously, you're going to let me taxi this Beech 18? So he gets up in the right seat, lets me get in the left seat, and he let me do all that. And man, I was so excited. I went home, told my parents, and then eventually he started letting me fly the Beech 18. So at that time we had a 180 and a Beech 18, and I flew the Beech with him for a couple weeks. I flew from the right seat on the takeoffs, and then he'd let me land from the left seat. And then one day out of the blue, I had about 18 hours in the airplane, and he says, well, I think I must go skydive today. And man, I was like, well, I wonder who's going to fly. And he said, well, do you think you could bring this back by yourself? And I said, yeah, I think so. He says, well, if you don't, you owe me $80,000. And man, we took off, and he jumped out, and that was my first solo in the Beech 18. And so I flew the airplane for about 4 years. I don't have my MEI, but I taught all the new jump pilots that would come in. You started out in the Beech 18. And then after you progress in the Beech, then we went into the Twin Otter. So by the end of my first year, this was back in 1997, I started flying the Twin Otter. And I was flying a Dash 200 Twin Otter. And, I had about 700 hours maybe at that point. It wasn't that many. But I was flying a Twin Otter around. I flew it all the following year. And I would travel. I kind of barnstorm with the Twin Otter, because a guy named Paul Faird from Carolina Sky Sports owned the Turbine Otter and the Casa. So we would help him, and we'd keep one in Greene County in Xenia, Ohio, and then I may go to Atlanta or St. Louis with an airplane for 2 or 3 days, and then I come back home to Xenia. But it taught me a lot, because I didn't have anyone to really go out and teach me like all this instrument flying and things like that. I had to learn on my own, flying a Twin Otter cross country solo. And so I flew the Otter for a couple years, and then I started flying right seat in a Casa 212, which is a Spanish built cargo plane. It looks like a C-130. And eventually I got typed in that, and the airplane weighed 17,000 pounds. We carried 35 skydivers.
Wow.
And man, here I was like 22 years old, something like that, 23. I'm flying this Casa all over the country, going to Florida, Arizona, Ohio, obviously, but just all over. Every other weekend I was there, or I was here flying for Jim West. And I flew a few thousand people. I mean, in one day, I flew 614 people in a Twin Otter.
Oh, and that was
Burnaby, Canada, or St. Catharines, Canada, out of a 2,000-foot grass strip. And I wore out the entire drop zone. So there was like an hour left of the day, and they just called me on the radio and said, park the airplane, we're done. And I wore out the whole drop zone. The Casa, I flew military jumps, or experimental drops. So we dropped 4-wheelers from free fall from 14,000 feet. they would ride them out the back, you know, and then a drogue parachute would open up. And then eventually, I forget how big the parachute was, but he's still on this four-wheeler, and he would fly this thing around and land it. And I got to do that. I was one of the very first, you know, pilots to get to do that kind of stuff with, that was Ted Strong. So Strong Enterprise. And really from the skydiving, it's really just taught me a lot. Taught me how to fly an airplane, heavy, and taught me to really like consider a lot of different things, because you got a lot of people's lives on your hand, right? So it was a lot of fun.
So you progressed to all sorts of awesome flying. What did you do after skydiving directly?
Well, after skydiving, I went to USA Jet Airlines up in Ypsilanti, Detroit, Michigan area. And what happened, the guy that typed me in the CASA, he said, hey, you got to get out of the skydive flying. It's time to move on. Contact my buddy at USA Jet, which the gentleman is still there at USA Jet. His name is Randy Houghton. And Randy Houghton is really big into the Yankee Air Museum. He flies the B-17 and stuff for, I believe, the C-47 also for them. But I contacted Randy, and they hired Falcon 20s. You know, I flew them for 4.5 years. Got to upgrade as captain after a year, and we flew auto parts mostly. And then after that, I went to the DC-9. So the picture here that you see is I was a co-pilot, a first officer. I believe that's a 10 series DC-9. So that's the baby, we call them the baby 9. It's the real short coupled DC-9, no slats on the front of the wings or anything like that. And we actually flew freight, and we also flew passengers. So for 3 years, I flew chartered passengers, mostly basketball teams and executives and stuff like that. And then I upgraded to captain. So I was a captain very short time before I left to go to the job that I'm at now. But 7.5 years at USA Jet, flying into Mexico, Canada, and all of the United States. That was a whole nother level of education, is just hauling freight. You know, I'm a true freight dog. I would, you know, go to FBOs and go to sleep laying on the couch, and we'd go down to Del Rio, Texas, and they would have a refrigerator there. The food was free for freight dogs, but if you're a corporate pilot or anything, you had to buy the food that was in the refrigerator. So they had a little bucket in there. So they'd have like burritos and different things like that. But a lot of great memories with a company like USA Jet. To take someone, at the time I already had maybe 3,000 hours or so when I was flying or started flying for them. But I learned a lot, you know, especially about IFR, you know, flying and, you know, a jet and things like that, going high speed. But I just, the small family atmosphere that USA Jet had, we had maybe 120 pilots at the most. Everybody knew everyone. We would hang out. We would go to dinner. We would meet up each other out on the road. So it was a lot of fun. I really missed that type of flying in that company.
So you've also flown overseas in support of our U.S. military efforts, flying King Airs. Tell us a little about what it's like to go from, you know, the professional environment in the U.S. and pretty structured environment to an environment like the war zone in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah. So what happened? The company that I was working for, I got furloughed from it, and I knew I was going to probably get furloughed, so I started looking for a job, and that's back in pretty much 2008, 2009. And what really has taken me is my model airplanes. So what happened, I contacted a friend that helped me with some RC stuff, or I helped him with some RC stuff. And eventually I got a job flying drones. So the picture that you see here is a MQ-1 Charlie. It's that one's called actually a Sky Warrior, but I flew Predator drones. And before I flew Predators or anything like this, I flew a small UAV called a Tiger Shark. And it was a small, had a Herbranson like goat cart engine on it. We flew with a Futaba radio, 9-channel transmitter, but we flew it from a GCS, which is a ground service control station. And with that smaller UAV, I ended up learning a lot. Then I got to go fly Predator drones, and I flew Predators for like 2 years. Long deployments. I was in Iraq, Balad, Iraq. I was in Al Assad, and then I was in Bagram, Afghanistan, flying them. And then I quit that job in like 2012. Went in and started flying MC-12s, King Air 350s, and the King Air. I wanted to get back in the cockpit, and that was the whole thing. And in my opinion, that was a big mistake because I took a huge pay cut. I made more money flying drones, and it was a lot. It was a challenge. Flying a drone is a challenge because you really have to think outside the box on some things that you're doing. But anyway, I started flying the MC-12s, and those are King Air 350s. I was over there about a year and a half flying those, and it's probably 1,200 hours of flying the MC-12s. And it was the same thing. It was a small company. We did a lot of really cool, contract work, government contract work, a lot of mission.
So, you're doing all of this professional flying, and at the same time, you mentioned earlier, you always wanted to own a biplane and go barnstorming. So a lot of folks know you as Mr. Good Folk, and you own Good Folk and O Times biplane rides. And there you are right there taking a ride out of one of your biplanes. Let's talk about how that business got started, and now you're up to a couple biplanes flying all around the Midwest. What do you think of that?
Well, it's, this kind of started when I was a kid, this big idea that I wanted to do this. And with me deploying, I did 10 deployments, in 4.5 years to Iraq and Afghanistan. I was able to save a lot of money, just because I was gone like almost 300 days a year. You're just gone. So I was able to save some. And then what happened is, really the whole long story. I don't even know if I've ever told anybody this. So I have a very good friend here that's in antique airplanes, and I've always been in antiques. I learned in a Piper Cub. Always been flying tail draggers. So when I was like 21, there was 4 of us that went in and bought a Champ. We paid $12,000 for it, and we had to scrounge up like $3,500 a piece, and we charged each other $6 an hour to fly it. So eventually then I bought another Champ, which I still have today. I've been flying the Champ that I have today for 25 years. But, I've always been in antiques. My buddy that is into these antiques, he knew I wanted to do the biplane business. I wanted a Stearman. And he's like, man, you don't want this Stearman. You want a Travel Air or Waco or something that you can carry more than one person. And that's what happened. I ended up saving some money. I started looking at Travel Airs. I started looking at Travel Airs, honestly, in 2009. And it was very, very expensive airplane. And at that time, I really didn't have the financially accounts saved up to go and purchase an airplane like that. And then I found an airplane, and I told my buddy, I said, hey, I want to buy this. Can I keep it at your place? And he's like, no, you can't keep it at my place. He says, what you need to do is buy some land, build a hangar, and then you can put your airplane in your hangar, and then you don't have to worry about, being in my way, pretty much. And that's kind of what happened. So I bought some land in 2010. I built a hangar, and I have a huge hangar, to be honest with you. And I had this Champ, and then eventually the biplane came. So in 2013, I was able to purchase this 1929 Travel Air, and it was all in this grand scheme of starting a biplane business, which is Good Folk and Old Time Biplane Rides. So when I was over in Afghanistan, even before I bought the airplane, I built the website. I was using like just stock photos of biplanes and different things like that, and just coming up with like what to say and what my pages wanted to look like. And I don't know anything about website design, but GoDaddy, makes it pretty easy. So that's kind of what I did. I just built my own website. And then eventually in 2013, I was able to get with the guy, Gary Lust, which if you're in antiques, you would know him. And we negotiated a price, and May 22nd, 2013, I landed in Dayton, Ohio. coming in from Afghanistan. My dad picked me up, and Gary was here at the hangar, and I exchanged money. And I literally just flew in from Dubai, this long flight from Dubai into Dayton, and then met Gary, and I bought this travel air and started this business. And so after that, in 2014, I had a friend over in Afghanistan. They actually had an accident. So there's two military personnel and my friend. They crashed an aircraft and got killed. So I escorted them home and brought him back to the United States and brought his remains to his family. And that was pretty hard on me. And I had 10 deployments under my belt. So at that point, I said I quit my job. This was January 2014. And I said, I'm going to go barnstorming. And I quit a job making pretty good money. But a barnstormer lived very free. I had some money saved up, had this airplane, and I just started marketing, internet, social media, and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be on anyone's agenda anymore. And that's what happened. 2014, in May, I just went gangbusters. I started going to all these different events, festivals, balloon festivals, and it really took off. And in July of 2014, I started the Barnstorming Carnival. And that is, we'd be on our 8th year right now. And it's an event at the Springfield Beckley Airport in co-sponsorship with Springfield, the city. They helped me host this event. The first year I hosted this event, obviously I have very good barnstorming friends. They flew in from all over, from South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, wherever. They were flying in. It was, the city said, sure, you can have this event. No backing, no money backing. And then they just said, you can have it. A few thousand people showed up. And they were just like astonished that a couple thousand people showed up at this event. And it's very family friendly. And that was the whole goal, is bring your family. You don't have to have any money, but you're going to have fun with your kids if they want to, you can build rockets and gliders. Everything was free. And then how I was able to pay for it was through a few sponsors that would donate some money, but other, things in kind. And also my business. I supported a lot of it, funded most of the event myself through the rockets and the marketing and different things like that. And then the city, on top of that, they've really come on board, because it's really turned into something great, to where, I get 5,000 to 6,000 spectators in a weekend. And to me, that is a good level for me, because everyone there is my barnstorming friends that's volunteering to park cars, volunteering to build rockets or gliders with kids. And myself and Ted Davis and Andrew King, we do biplane rides. So I charge for the biplane rides. The biplane rides would pay for the event. And I've been so blessed that we've had weather good enough to actually support the event every year. So it's been really, really cool, Kyle.
Well, I've been to one. I think it was 2014 or 2015. We flew our vintage 1955 Piper Apache over our family hauler and showed up, and it was awesome to see kids at the AMA trailer flying the simulators, going and building rockets. Looking at, I remember a Stinson Jr. being on the ramp, and a Fairchild and our Apache and all these biplanes, and really taking in what barnstorming was in the 20s and 30s, right, around the countryside. And you're bringing it to Central Ohio, which is pretty cool. So I've got to ask, you take folks rides in the travel air, and now you own a new standard, a big new standard, very rare airplane. What do you like better? You like hauling 2 people up front in the travel air, or 4 in the front of the new standard? Tell us a little bit about the differences there.
Well, the new standard, it holds 4 passengers, so it's a 5-place airplane. To answer your question quickly, other than going through the history of the new standard, I tell people this: the new standard is the new standard of life, because this thing flies like a Rolls Royce with a V12. It is so smooth, so easy to fly. You could fly well over 100 people in a day and not be worn out. With the Travel Air, I can fly, say 60 people. At the end of the day, I'm ready to take a break. I mean, you're worn out. The Travel Air is a little bit more difficult. It's a little quicker, but you can get in and out of fields a little shorter than what the Standard can. But the Standard is an airplane that, in my opinion, compared to my Travel Air, the Standard handles turbulence a lot better. It's a little bit more tricky in crosswinds and things like that. But I do love the new Standard. It levitates. It doesn't fly. It's like magic.
That's awesome. So while you're doing the barnstorming business here and taking, as you said, over 100 people a ride a day in biplanes, you're also flying at the world's largest fractional ownership company. So what's it like going between the Challenger 350 and then back to something like a Travel Air or a new Standard? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that picture there, I wanted to just talk about that real quick. That family lives here in Jamestown, Ohio. The girl that I'm holding, that's Andy. So Andy's now like 6 or 7 years old. When she was 3, she flew in the Travel Air. My Travel Air is named Ace. So she flew in Ace when she was 3 years old with her dad on Father's Day. So that was June 2016. And then about a week later, I bought the new Standard. They came to the carnival and they flew in the new Standard like 2 weeks later. So they were the first ones to fly in both airplanes. And that is their gift. They all get to ride in a biplane with me. And they come out here. It's such a great friendship and family that I've met over the years. I fly over their house and I always wave at them from the air. So that's just the story about barnstorming, because that's why barnstorming is so cool, because you meet people and you become relationships and friendships that will last forever. And those kids are something I'll never forget. So Andy is amazing. So, but to get to your question, I fly for a large fractional ownership company. I've been there 12 years. I started out flying an Encore Plus back in 2008. And then I flew an Excel, Citation Excel. I flew that for like 4.5 years. And now I fly a Bombardier Challenger 350. I've been in the Challenger for 3 years as of last month. So 37 months I've been flying the Challenger around. And, I fly that, and literally I will get out of that airplane at events. I have to run here, pick up my biplane, and go to an event. I don't even get to go home. That's how busy I keep some of my scheduling, and it's kind of wore me out. It's been good. It keeps me sharp. You're able to keep, to fly at a level, in an airline and for any corporate business like that, you have to be very sharp. We go to sim every 6 months. I get PC checks, and then we do a loft cycle. You have to be on your P's and Q's. You have to know your SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. You have to know your checklist procedures. And then I can get out and I can jump in this airplane and I can go out and participate in a large event and fly and enjoy people. And I tell people when I land like a butterfly with sore feet. I land so soft that you don't even know we're on the ground. So I do that in a jet also. But that is, something that I do to make a living, to make ends meet, to pay my medical insurance and things like that, because I don't barnstorm enough. I'm not like a Rob Locke. He does this full time, year round. I'm good for only about 6 months a year in Ohio. But I'm able to support my business, support the new Standard, support this Travel Air. And it's been a great thing. But, I do enjoy the corporate flying and, the airline stuff. It's fun.
So now let's fast forward to the current time. You're well known on YouTube with over 11,000 subscribers for the videos you've been making, covering everything from your barnstorming adventures to taking folks in a 182 recently, jumping out at a 182 in Ohio, to flying your Champ to the Challenger 350, covering all different kinds of aviation. what's it like seeing folks at FBOs and local airports around the country that know who Dewey Davenport is and know what you do, just like we're talking about today? What's that like?
It's pretty fun. I enjoy it because I'm a very, I'm not an introvert. I like talking to people. I like being involved with the community. I'm very mentoring type. Ever since I've been younger, I go to, talk to kids and try to help even adults. But with the YouTube channel, it actually is a platform good for people to just see different things. A lot of people don't see these antique airplanes that I put on my YouTube channel. And I don't horseplay or make weird videos. I try to make stuff very honest, very documentary type. And it's not really, if you're not an aviation enthusiast, it's probably hard for you to watch. But if you are, you're going to enjoy that. You'll enjoy some of the history, the stories that the aircraft can tell, and different things like that. I can walk through. When I was doing the corporate stuff, the company I worked for, they made me take down all the videos, and it was okay. Whatever. It was kind of heartbreaking because my videos were more inspirational type videos to give people a look at what I do, but also give them the opportunity to say, you know what, that's what I want to do. And I always made it in a very uplifting and mentoring type of video, right? And that's what my vlogs are with the antique airplanes. But I enjoy, I like walking through Chicago O'Hare terminal and people say, hey, you're the guy on YouTube, aren't you? And then I get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of messages. And I try to take a lot. I don't take as many as I used to because it does consume a ton of time. But I do try to give some people some guidance on, at least how to start flying, where to begin, where they can go to learn, and then give them some choices for careers. A lot of people, right now with the economy or the way things are, we went from having a shortage of pilots to now we have this surplus of pilots. So now people are going to be wondering how can they build time, especially younger, low time pilots. So, I'm a big advocate on skydive flying. I mean, I still love flying skydivers. How can you not? But, there's aero mapping and different things like that. So I try to tell people that through my platform, through, YouTube, through Instagram, and stuff like that. Yep.
So let's go back a bit to kind of wrapping what we just said there about the career side and the inspirational side of it with vintage airplanes. I mean, you're clearly attracted to vintage airplanes. You always have been. I have been as well. Grew up in a family that really cherishes our vintage airplanes, and so many of our members' families do too. Why are you so inspired and gravitate so much to vintage airplanes? And if you were telling a kid out there to buy their first airplane, why should they get into vintage aviation like you?
Man, that's a loaded question. Well, it's real simple. I learned flying vintage. Even before I even learned, my best friend, Danny, they had a Chief in their backyard. So I was always around stuff like that, Chiefs, Champs, Cubs. And where I went to go learn, they rent Cubs, Champs, Taylor Crafts. And once you fly something like that, you really learn what it's all about, in aviation, the freedom of it. And seat of the pants, how to fly an airplane, and grassroots. There's nothing like taking off here, going over to your buddies 10 miles up the road, having a barbecue. Yeah, you can do that in a Cherokee or a Cessna or something like that. But having these old vintage airplanes, I tell people they have a history like a human. They can almost tell the same story. If you know enough about it, you can go and tell a story, and a person may not even know you're talking about an airplane. And that is why I do it. I have so much fun flying old fabric airplanes. One thing, most of them, like a Champ and Cub, they're very inexpensive to operate, very inexpensive to buy, and they should be on grass. I mean, that's just their home, and that is what I do. I go around, for my YouTube channel, for instance. I don't talk about glass cockpits. You know, I tell people mine has real glass. It has round glass gauges, right? And that's real glass to me. And there's nothing like having, you know, something like that, sticking your arms out the window, sticking your head out the side, and just really having grassroots. And it's dying off. That's another reason why I do it. If people would do, I would say if pilots would do a little bit of work, they would bring a lot more youth back into it. Go out to a school and spend 2 or 3 hours and say, hey, you know, I fly for a living. This is what you could do to take a Young Eagles ride, or you can come out to my place and I can take you for a ride. It's so easy to do that. So that's what I've been doing for 25 years, you know, and just trying to inspire people. Right now, which you guys can't see, but I have 2 kids from inner city Dayton out watching my champ. It's their first time. They came out for a barbecue last summer, but their mother contacted me and said, hey, are you still willing to let my kids come out and help you with the hangar and things? So I haven't been able to clean the hangar this spring. So they're cleaning the airplane. I let them start my tractors up and drive them around because it's something they've never done, right? I taught them how to move the aircraft out of the hangar. So it's little steps like that, because that's where I started. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I went to the local airport and, you know, they had me washing Cubs and champs. And then they say, hey, can you go over there and ask Darren for some prop wash? So now run across the airport and say, hey, I'm looking for some prop wash to clean the airplane. And then find out it's this big joke.
You got caught up by it just like we all did as a teenager, right?
That's right, man. There's so many people that are aviation enthusiasts that has lived our life that's had these same steps, really. And, you know, if you could just give a little bit of something back, and that it really, you'll see it. You'll see the big improvement.
We know in the Vintage Aviation Association with EAA, we have 2 sayings, right? We love fun and affordable airplanes. We love 65 horsepower Continental planes from the 40s. And it's where the fun is, right? It truly is. Being able to fly a Cub with the door down, or a Champ with the door off, or if you're so lucky, flying a biplane and stick your head and your arms out the window like we saw earlier on screen here. It's a blast. So, Dewey, I thank you for being on the segment today. Really appreciate you sharing your stories with us and your time, and look forward to seeing you around EA in the future. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Hey, thank you, Kyle, and thanks everyone. And I'll see you guys at Oshkosh next year.
All right. Yeah, Oshkosh 21 is going to be a great year. So signing off from this segment of Spirit of Aviation Week with Dewey Davenport. Take a look, eatogether.org for more segments.